Lee Marvin, a name that became an icon of American cinema. Not just because of his towering frame and rugged features, but for the raw intensity he brought to every role, breathing life into characters that were complex, conflicted, and unforgettable. Born on February 19, 1924, in New York City, Marvin came from a privileged background. His father, Lamont Waltman Marvin, was a successful advertising executive, while his mother, Courtney Washington Davidge, wrote elegantly about fashion and beauty. But beneath that comfortable upbringing, Marvin was anything but ordinary. Restless, rebellious, and untamed, he carried a fire within him that would later define his screen persona. At 18, his life took a dramatic turn. Marvin enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps, serving as a scout sniper during World War II. He faced the brutality of combat in the Pacific Theater, most notably in the bloody Battle of Saipan. There, he was struck down by machine gun fire, a near-death experience that seared itself into his soul. He left the battlefield wounded, yet honored with a Purple Heart. Those scars, both visible and hidden, never left him. War gave Marvin a lifelong sense of discipline, pain, and perspective. It forged in him a hardened realism that later infused every character he portrayed. When he played soldiers, killers, or haunted men, it wasn't just acting. It was truth, born from experience. But when the war ended, Marvin found himself adrift, unsure of his path. Fate intervened in the most unlikely way. While working as a plumber's assistant at a theater in upstate New York, he was asked to step in for an actor who had fallen ill. That moment of chance sparked something deep inside, a passion for performance that would change his life forever. Determined, he began formal training at the American Theater Wing, studying under some of the era's most respected coaches. With his rugged good looks, deep, gravelly voice, and brooding presence, Marvin quickly caught the attention of casting directors. Throughout the 1950s, he honed his craft in supporting roles, playing villains, lawmen, and soldiers in war films and westerns. Even in smaller roles, Marvin stood out. He wasn't just delivering lines. He was channeling the scars of his past, the authenticity of a man who had lived through violence, loss, and survival. And that was the essence of Lee Marvin, a restless youth turned warrior, a warrior turned actor, and an actor turned legend. His life, both on and off screen, unfolded like a film itself, dramatic, brutal, and endlessly compelling. Lee Marvin's rise to stardom was not immediate, but his persistence and raw talent soon carved out a place for him in Hollywood. He began making his mark on television, appearing in popular series such as Dragnet and Wagon Train. Recognition grew when he took on film roles that showcased his intensity, as the ruthless gangster in The Big Heat, 1953, and as a menacing presence in Bad Day at Black Rock, 1955, where he stood tall alongside an all-star cast. But Marvin's true breakthrough came with the television series M Squad, 1957 to 1960. As Lieutenant Frank Ballinger, a hard-nosed Chicago detective, Marvin brought an unprecedented realism to the small screen. His portrayal was raw, unflinching, and starkly authentic, a groundbreaking vision of urban crime that made him a household name. The 1960s and 1970s marked the golden era of his career. Marvin became synonymous with gritty, unforgettable performances in films such as The Killers, 1964, The Professionals, 1966, and, most famously, The Dirty Dozen,
a landmark war film
1967.
that dominated the box office and
As Major John Reisman, the battle-hardened officer tasked with leading a band of condemned men on a suicide mission, Marvin embodied the quintessential anti-hero. The film became a cultural phenomenon, not only for its unorthodox take on war, but also because of Marvin's commanding presence that anchored the story. In 1965, Marvin delivered perhaps his most surprising performance in the dark comedy western Cat Ballou. Playing both a drunken gunslinger and his sinister twin, he moved seamlessly between slapstick comedy and menacing violence. His unshaven, staggering, yet strangely capable gunslinger was unforgettable, and the role earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor. With that Oscar win, Marvin officially secured his place among Hollywood's elite. The years that followed only solidified his reputation. He headlined a string of celebrated films, including Point Blank, 1967, a stylish neo-noir directed by John Berman, where Marvin's performance as Walker, a betrayed criminal seeking vengeance, was cold, restrained, and simmering with fury beneath the surface. The role helped redefine the American anti-hero for a new generation of audiences. He also starred in Hell in the Pacific, 1968, further proving his ability to balance grit with depth in unconventional storytelling. Off-screen, Marvin was every bit as uncompromising as his characters. Known for his dry wit and rugged demeanor, he lived life on his own terms, far removed from Hollywood's glitz. A passionate fisherman and outdoorsman, he preferred the solitude of nature and the company of close friends over the shallow glamour of celebrity life. Lee Marvin's career was a testament to authenticity, both on and off the screen. Every role he played carried a weight that audiences could feel, a lived-in truth that few actors could match. He didn't just perform characters, he became them, shaping a legacy that continues to influence cinema to this day. Yet for all his success on screen, Lee Marvin's personal life was never far from controversy. The most infamous episode came in the late 1970s with the highly publicized palimony case involving his former partner, Michelle Triola. Played out in courtrooms and splashed across headlines, the case became a legal landmark in the United States, reshaping conversations about cohabitation and property rights between unmarried couples. It was a scandal that thrust Marvin into the public eye in a way that no film role ever could. Despite the media storm, Marvin's career endured. He remained a formidable presence in Hollywood, taking on commanding roles in films like Emperor of the North, 1973, The Big Red One, 1980, and Gorky Park, 1983. Until the very end of his career, he maintained a reputation as one of the industry's most magnetic actors, often standing shoulder to shoulder with rugged contemporaries such as Charles Bronson and Robert Ryan. Men who, like him, defined the grit and realism of action and war films for an entire generation. Behind the scenes, Marvin's personal life was equally dramatic. In April 1952, he married Betty Ebeling at the dawn of his Hollywood career. Betty, spirited and resilient, became a stabilizing force during Marvin's early years, managing their home while he spent long stretches away on demanding film shoots. Together, they built a family. Their first son, Christopher Lamont Marvin, was born the same year they married. He would go on to live a full life of his own before passing in 2013. The couple later welcomed 3 daughters, Courtney Lee, Cynthia Louise, and Claudia Leslie. Their youngest, Claudia, born in 1958, faced a tragic fate, passing away in 2012. Balancing the demands of fatherhood with the grueling pressures of Hollywood proved nearly impossible. Betty often shouldered the responsibility of raising their children alone, while Marvin, increasingly consumed by his career and public image as a tough guy leading man, drifted further away from home life. The strain was relentless. Prolonged absences, the temptations of fame, and constant media attention eventually fractured their marriage. After 2 years of separation, they officially divorced in January 1967, a split that drew public attention as yet another chapter in the turbulent life of one of Hollywood's most uncompromising stars. Decades later, in her candid 2010 memoir Tales of a Hollywood Housewife, Betty shared her side of the story. With honesty and vulnerability, she painted a portrait of life in Marvin's shadow, the emotional sacrifices, the unspoken struggles, and the toll of loving a man whose career consumed him. Among her most startling revelations was her claim that Marvin had carried on an affair with Academy Award-winning actress Anne Bancroft, a revelation that once again stirred curiosity about the man behind the legend. Though the alleged affair with Anne Bancroft was never confirmed by either party, it added another layer of intrigue to Lee Marvin's already colorful personal life. It also highlighted the hidden struggles behind the hardened public image of the actor. After his divorce from Betty, Marvin entered into a tumultuous and highly publicized relationship with Michelle Triola, a romance that ultimately became infamous for the landmark palimony case that followed their separation. Yet, after the storm, Marvin eventually found a measure of peace when he reconnected with his childhood sweetheart, Pamela Feely. Their shared history gave him a sense of stability that had long eluded him. They married in 1970, and unlike his earlier, drama-filled relationships, this union remained private and enduring. Pamela supported him through his later years, as he faced health struggles from alcoholism and respiratory illness, and she was by his side until his death in 1987. A decade later, in 1997, Pamela honored his memory by publishing Lee, a romance, a deeply personal account of their life together. Her words revealed a side of Marvin the public rarely saw, not the gruff anti-hero of the screen, but a complex, loving, and deeply human man who found solace and meaning in their relationship. Throughout his career, Marvin was known for his blunt manner, commanding presence, and refusal to indulge in Hollywood gossip. He rarely spoke of his peers, never one to hand out praise casually. That is why, when Marvin finally broke his silence about Paul Newman, one of Hollywood's most revered leading men, it sent shockwaves through the industry. On screen, Marvin had built his reputation on raw, gritty portrayals of morally ambiguous men in films like The Dirty Dozen, Point Blank, and Cat Ballou. Newman, by contrast, embodied a polished charisma and classic leading man charm. For years, fans and film historians speculated, did these two giants of American cinema, so different in style and spirit, share camaraderie or rivalry behind the scenes? In a rare, unguarded interview in the early 1980s, long after both men had secured their place in Hollywood history, Lee Marvin finally addressed the questions fans had wondered about for decades. He began by openly praising Paul Newman's extraordinary talent, admitting that although he had remained silent for years, he always held deep respect for Newman's work ethic, integrity, and dedication to the craft. "I always saw Paul as the kind of actor who never let the industry change him," Marvin reflected. "He stayed grounded. He was a hell of a craftsman, never flashy, never doing more than what the role demanded. That's something I admired, maybe even envied a little." Though their careers occasionally overlapped, with both men considered for some of the same roles during the 1960s and 70s, they never truly shared the screen, except in The Rack, 1956. It was on that project that Marvin gained a deeper appreciation for Newman's process. Newman had drawn upon a haunting memory from his Navy years, the gruesome death of a close friend on an aircraft carrier, to fuel the raw emotional depth of his performance. Marvin admitted he often studied Newman's work closely, particularly in HUD, Cool Hand Luke, and The Hustler. While Marvin was drawn to roles that embodied violence, alienation, and existential toughness, he admired Newman's ability to convey inner conflict and moral ambiguity with deceptive ease. He also contrasted their personal lives. Where Marvin lived hard, drinking heavily and embracing chaos, Newman seemed disciplined, centered, and purposeful. "I respected him for being a family man," Marvin said. "You didn't see his name in the tabloids for nonsense. He had Joanne Woodward, and he stayed true to her, while the rest of us were stumbling out of bars at 3 in the morning chasing ghosts." Marvin went on to highlight Newman's philanthropy, from the Hole in the Wall gang camp to the Newman's own brand, which donated all profits to charity. Having faced his own demons, Marvin admitted that Newman's ability to turn fame into something positive was a lesson in what could be achieved if you didn't let ego get in the way. Still, Marvin was characteristically blunt, confessing that rivalry had crept into his feelings during their prime. "There were roles I wanted that Paul got. And hell, I was bitter. But looking back, he earned them. He was a damn good actor. I just didn't want to admit it then." The interview ended on an unexpectedly vulnerable note. "I never told him this," Marvin confessed, "but if I had to choose someone who represented what was truly good about being an actor in Hollywood, someone who kept his soul intact, it would be Paul. We weren't close, but I respected the hell out of him. Maybe I was too proud to say it then. But I'll say it now." Marvin's long-awaited remarks not only shed light on his private view of Newman but also revealed something deeper: his own values, regrets, and the quiet admiration he carried for a man he once considered a rival. For fans of both actors, Lee Marvin's candid words about Paul Newman became a moment of unexpected poignancy, a rare glimpse of mutual respect between two giants of American cinema. Marvin himself, long celebrated for his gravelly voice, rugged looks, and tough guy persona, lived a life as uncompromising as the characters he portrayed. But those same lifestyle choices, years of heavy smoking and drinking, eventually took a devastating toll on his health. By the mid-1980s, long after his Hollywood career had secured him fame and recognition, Marvin's health had begun a sharp decline. In December 1986, his condition worsened dramatically, leading to a hospitalization that lasted more than 2 weeks. Doctors diagnosed him with coccidioidomycosis, better known as valley fever, a fungal infection that primarily attacks the lungs and mimics the symptoms of severe respiratory illness: fever, persistent coughing, and difficulty breathing. For Marvin, the infection proved especially dangerous, plunging him into respiratory distress, a life-threatening state that demanded immediate and aggressive intervention. To stabilize him, doctors administered high doses of steroids, which helped ease the inflammation in his lungs but brought unforeseen complications. The treatment severely weakened his digestive system, leading to catastrophic intestinal ruptures. The crisis required emergency surgery, a colectomy, in which part of Marvin's colon was removed to repair the damage. Though the procedure was critical in saving his life, it became clear that Marvin's health was in irreversible decline, and the path to recovery would be uncertain at best. Through it all, Marvin showed the same resilience that had defined him on screen and in life. A decorated Marine Corps veteran of World War II, he had carried the scars of combat into every role he played, embodying toughness and raw authenticity. Yet, the combined toll of war trauma, relentless smoking, drinking, and years of wear on his body had finally caught up with him. On August 29, 1987, Lee Marvin's battle came to an end. He died of a heart attack at the age of 63. His passing marked not only the loss of a Hollywood legend, but also the closing of an era in American cinema. A leading figure of war films and westerns throughout the 1960s and 70s, Marvin left behind a legacy defined by power, grit, and honesty. His death was mourned by fans and colleagues alike, a final testament to the indelible mark he left on the industry and the audiences who revered him.